Welcome to the Be Unstoppable podcast, where we bring you the voices that are shaping industries, breaking boundaries, and redefining what true success looks like. Today's guest isn't just a music producer, he's a creative force who's redefined what's possible in modern music. Jake Gosling is a multi-platinum, Grammy-nominated hitmaker who has helped craft the soundtracks of some of the biggest moments in pop culture. With over 7 billion Spotify streams, 9 UK #1 albums, and an array of iconic collaborations with artists like Ed Sheeran, Shawn Mendes, and One Direction, Jake has left a permanent mark on the global music landscape. But behind the platinum records and award nominations is a story of relentless passion, gritty perseverance, and a pure love for music that started long before the fame. From his early days playing in college bands to setting up sticky studios where you go on to create groundbreaking music, Jake has always been about pushing boundaries and blending sounds in unexpected ways. Today, we're going beyond the beats and the studio sessions. We're diving into the mindset, the sacrifices, and the moments that shaped him, not just as a producer, but as a person. Get ready for a deep dive into what it takes to turn raw talent into global success. Jake Gosling, welcome to the Be Unstoppable podcast. And for all of you, remember, you have the power to choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable. Jake, welcome.
Man, thank you. That was an incredible thing. I got quite emotional actually through that. That was awesome, man. That was awesome.
All good. It's all good. It's really good to have you here.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the work you do, but even more so, just a big fan of you as a person. One of my favorite people in the business. So I'm really excited to have you here.
That's great
to be able to have you on the podcast.
No, thank you, man.
And looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, me too.
We're going to dive straight into the early years.
Yeah.
Tell us about your earliest memories of music, what life was like growing up for you, and if there was a defining moment that led you to want to work in the music industry.
Yeah, so I mean, I was surrounded with music as a kid all the all the time. My dad was a musician, so he was in different bands and stuff like that in the 60s and 70s. My mum, before was with my dad, dated a promoter who did loads of gigs and stuff like that. Again, back in the 60s and 70s. So her music background was really sort of also in that sort of world. I think she was probably a groupie, to be fair, but I love Mum. But she,
I love your mum as well. She's amazing.
But it's I think as a kid, I literally couldn't escape it. So it was something that I guess wasn't particularly normal. I mean, my mum's sister dated Peter Green, who was in Fleetwood Mac. He was the original sort of lineup from that. So within the family, stuff like that, we were quite close with Fleetwood Mac, and my dad was managed by Bill Wyman, who was the bass player of the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. So it was quite a unique childhood, to be fair. And I was, like I say, surrounded with it, and that obviously had a massive influence on my life. And it was very eclectic. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know Morris dancing by any, that weird thing.
I can't do it, but I'm aware of it.
I'm sure that, I can't imagine you doing it, but maybe I can. But it's like it's a really old English folk tradition where it's all to do with the harvest and all this sort of stuff. And the music's quite off the wall, and it's all accordions and melodeons and all that sort of stuff, and English folk. And there was this folk festival in Sidmouth that as a kid we used to go to, and it was world folk. So it was folk from Africa, from India, it was the roots, I guess, the roots of where music came from. And we used to do this quite a lot, and my parents were part of a folk like thing. And it was the first time I got drunk. I think I was about 2. I went around the pub and finished all the little bits off, all the bits off in the pub. But it was an amazing experience, I guess. So all these elements sort of, I guess, helped build and shape what I was into. And my music range was quite eclectic, from classical to folk to, I guess, my dad was into progressive rock and jazz and stuff like that. His band was a real mix of that, quite off the wall, quite psychedelic, I guess. He played with Hendrix, and he also session musicianed with, a few other bands of that day. So yeah, like I said, I was always at festivals. I was always at gigs. I mean, it's literally I probably couldn't escape it. But funny enough, my dad was like, "Look, as I was getting older, he was like, music's tough. Do you really want to do this?" And I'm like, I don't know anything else. I mean, it's something I'd always loved doing. I wasn't particularly academic at school. I'd always get distracted and sort of wander off in my own mind. And music was always something I came back to. I had a piano teacher that used to like classical stuff, which I didn't really enjoy. I found it quite hard because I'm slightly dyslexic as well. So with the note reading, I'd be like, what's this? But he used to like try and keep me in time with a pencil and beat me on the head with it,
And how was that for you? Because one of the things, for example, you came in here and the first thing you did is you played on the piano, and I've been at your house and you just jump on the keys and have a little tinkle, and it's a very natural thing for you. It's almost like an extension of you, the piano. How did you meet the piano, and how did you really kind of build that relationship?
Well, we had a piano in the house. We had like a baby grand thing. My dad's a pianist, so he'd be playing all the time. Music was always filling up the rooms, and he taught me like how to play blues and how to improvise, and I guess just sort of like experiment with it. And like I say, I wasn't particularly that technical, but I guess I got to work with my ears. And my dad always said to me, look, your ears don't lie. Go with that. Trust your ears, which helped me later down the line with mixing and stuff like that. And working out where things should sit, just try and reference things, listen to things and try and position it, give it space, I guess. Feel it, 100% feel it. And that really came from the bands I was in. I was in different bands through college, which is like a funk thing. And then I got into like an indie sort of band. I went up to Manchester, and I was at uni at Salford, and I got really into sampling and stuff like that. So I had this band called Coup de Rate, and we printed our own dub plates with samples on it, and then we had this scratcher guy that would like sort of throw it down and whatever. And I had these pads, and it was really fun. And I loved art as well, and we I had all these old sort of like VHS stuff, which was like I would make loops of visuals and project them on the back of the wall.
Okay.
The band was called Coup de Rate, and we got really close to the signing a few times. But it's tough, and someone would leave the band, and then I'd be like, oh. It's just me on my own. It's me on my own again.
On your own.
Yeah.
So just taking it back to the early childhood, and you mentioned some very iconic names that were in and around you at the time. Did you see that as this is a bit different? This is to have these people in my life is not necessarily the norm, or were you aware of those people and what they had done and what they had achieved and that they were here? Or were you just kind of like, this is normal life, this is how I live?
I think it was sort of normal, really, without the it's not normal, I guess, in the way, but what is the normal, I guess? But for me, because it was just people, they were people, and they were hugely successful. But I guess that broke down the things. I remember as a kid, I never really had, like a lot of my mates or whatever would have like be a fan of someone and have a poster on the wall of the band or an iconic, and I was never really like that. It was really weird. I was always looking for something else, I guess. I was always, because I don't know why, and I was always trying to experiment with different types of music. I think that's what it was, because I was open to so much of it in different styles and genres. My parents didn't listen to the same thing all the time. And as you grow up anyway, you want to push the boundaries. You want to experience and try out new things. And music was part of my journey to sort of discover, and I'm still doing it now. And I think that's what's exciting about it. That's what keeps the drive going, because you're always learning something. And I think that's the key to it. I hate, it scares me to think one day you wake up and go, I know it all, but you never will. So thank God, you're always learning something.
And do you think your parents were, you're quite open and free spirited, and having met your mum, I was like, in the summer, I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. Do you think your parents were a factor in your freedom to experiment musically?
Oh, 100%. I mean, they really did sort of let me, I mean, I was blessed because my dad had a studio, and it was reel to reel. So, at the age of 9, I remember, writing my first song to this girl called Nikki, who I fancied at school.
Shout out to Nikki.
Shout out to Nikki.
Did you have a date?
Well, I mean, yes, we did.
Did she break up with you?
I don't know. I think it just fizzled out, to be fair. I was 9.
I was going to say she messed up.
Yeah. Well,
shout out to Nikki.
Shout out to Nikki. But yeah, it was such a basic song.
Yeah.
But I remember bawling my eyes out, and my mum was like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
But I guess I'm quite an emotional person. I think in music and stuff like that, that was like you said when I walked in here and started jumping on the piano. I think it's like, for me, it's an outlet, and it's somewhere where I can escape, and I can. And when I'm songwriting, it gives me a real chance to let things out. It's like a little stopcock in the top of my head, and I can just go and just go, okay. And it's good to talk about things, especially when I'm co-writing with other people as well.
So you're in the bands, people keep leaving, you're close to getting
really
signed.
bad.
then it goes a little bit left.
Yeah.
What was the next thing that happened for you in terms of your journey in music?
Yeah, so after the Manchester thing, I was at a real loose end. I was like, I don't know what to do. I was going to stay in Manchester and continue with the band stuff, but then obviously being on my own, that didn't happen. But what I did do, which was quite smart, was doing in the summer holidays, I did work experience at record labels.
Okay.
So I worked at Virgin in marketing, like in the summer holidays, which was wicked because I could like take all their CDs and stuff when no one was looking. Don't big up Virgin. And I got really into it, but my approach was, I was. It's sitting in on meetings and stuff like that, and I think there was a Shaggy track or something like that, and I had to write out the lyrics and listen to the stuff and do like little odd jobs for them and stuff like that. And I started doing marketing plans but I didn't do them normally because I did art, so I started like drawing and painting and doing collages and making them really going in, probably too much, but they were like, "Whoa, what's this guy up to?" It was different. I wasn't just typing it up and I was actually making it into an art form, I guess, and then photocopying that and turning it into a whole thingy. And off the back of that, I obviously went back to uni again, and then I got a call from a PR company, a girl called Jo Hart, who you all know, Jo Hart.
Love Jo.
Yeah, brilliant. And I was the first person she employed.
Wow.
Poor her. Well, she set up on her own, and she's a record plugger.
Yeah.
And I needed money, and I moved back to home. The office was in Kilburn, and Jo interviewed me, and Virgin had recommended me, which was kind of them, and said, "Look, we had this intern kid called Jake, and have a chat with him." And I didn't know anything about record plugging, but I went along and I got the job. And we got on really well. It's just like me and her in the office, But to be fair, my heart was not in it, and I stuck it out for as long as I could. But, I would pick up the phone and it was all regional radio, and you'd phone up and it was like Jimmy Nail, like, Crocodile, will you play this record? You know what I mean?
Was it Crocodile Shoes?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And, but it was like Usher as well. Usher's first time. So some of it was really sick, but, and NSYNC and stuff like that. And then what happened was that I got a phone call one day. I was quite late a few times. My head wasn't really in it. I got a phone call from Jo. Oh, no, from Dragon FM in Wales saying, by the way, can you let NSYNC know? This is Justin Timberlake and all the boys are on the bus and they're with Jo. And they had to go from one end of England to the other end of England, for this radio show. And I forgot to tell Jo that the interview had been cancelled.
Oh, wow.
Right, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they literally got stuck in traffic. I think it took them like 7-8 hours for them to get all the way to Wales from wherever they were. Jo was livid and not surprised because she was stuck with the boys.
Yeah.
She was like, these young American kids are driving me nuts,
Yeah.
And, here we go. And, so then she goes, we need to talk. And I got fired. Rightly so. But to be fair, that was the turning point for me, actually. That was because I thought, well, I'd try on the other side of the industry. So at that moment, I'm getting in the car, I drove down the Westway. Again, just the floodgates came on, and I was like, it was a revelation, though. It was like, I know what I need to do. I need to do music. I've got to do it. There's no other choice.
It's really funny because we've had a few people on here on this podcast,
Right.
and they've spoken about being fired.
Yeah.
And that being the moment where
Oh.
they actually realize this is what I need to do, or this is where I need to go, or this is how I need to do what the next step looks like. And for you, that was being fired by Jo Hart,
Who I love.
who we love.
Yeah.
Jo's amazing.
And she still brings up the story every time I see her. She's like, she goes like, the best thing I did for you was firing you.
So at the time when you were working with Jo, were you
Yeah.
still making music? Were you writing songs?
No,
Were
I
you-
wasn't. I couldn't because I was a full-time job.
Mhm.
I was, it's in Kilburn. I was driving up to Kilburn every day, and
Yeah.
I was living in Surrey, so it was a good old
Yeah.
hour and a bit to get there and back each day. And I had a mate that lived in London, and sometimes I'd crash with him. But no, music was on hold, and that part of me sort of was really missing. I really missed that side of what I was doing. So you're absolutely right. Being fired was that catalyst
Yeah.
for me to go, there's no other option. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. And I think I've always been like that. I've always been very like, I don't know if manifest is the right word, but it probably is. I think it's like, I think long and hard about it. I've always done it as a kid, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make it the best it can be, or try to do that, whatever that may be. But
And how important is that, do you think, for, because I often say to people, like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. We all know that saying. And the importance of seeing through the thing that you say you're going to do, especially in this industry, in order to be successful and as successful as you have. How important is that mindset? This podcast is very much about an unstoppable mindset. How important is that mindset?
For me, it's the most important thing. It's what keeps me going every single day. I mean, I'm self-employed, so I have to get myself up in the morning.
Yeah.
I have to make sure that I go and create a song, write a song, work on some music, whatever that may be creatively. But it's only up to me. No one's telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So I have to have that drive and that mindset to wake up to go, and sometimes it's hard. Especially for me after a few bottles of wine the night before. No, I'm joking. But or am I? But no, it's like it is that thing that, and I love it as well. So I mean that makes it a lot easier. But to be fair, it's also the rejections. That the amount of knockbacks that I've had is many more than the successes. I mean, millions,
I imagine in
billions
the
of them.
early days that was
Oh,
a
God.
lot. How did you cope with that? What was the mindset to get through that? Because you started producing now. You've realized being a PR plugger, radio plugger is
Wasn't
not
for me,
is not it. You're starting to make music now, and I imagine you're trying to get in the studio with people, and they're saying, "Nah, mate."
Yeah, well, I mean, this is it. I mean, you do have to be thick-skinned, obviously, but I think it's like the rejections actually gave me a bit more fire. I don't know why. I think it was like, no, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Or what I do tend to think is that it wasn't meant to be. I always have this thing where the universe has decided that this isn't for me. This isn't my path. I wasn't supposed to get that cut.
Yeah.
Or the song wasn't supposed to be placed by this artist because it's going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or there's something better. So I look at it like that rather than going, oh, poor me, what a shame, I'm just a failure. Because otherwise I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm just channeling it in a different way maybe and thinking about it in a different way. I call it reprogramming the mind, I guess, and just going, well, how do I get to this point? Well, I have to work through all these things. And I take on so much. I take on too much half the time.
I always say that I always say the world's in a conspiracy to see me succeed. So every time I'm told a no, it's because you're part of that conspiracy that's supposed to redirect me to where I'm meant to be. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're similar. I think that's why we get on so well because, whenever we meet, whenever we chat, there's such a positive energy and there's always something, whatever it is, something happens or there's a path or a door or something that opens up wherever it will be. And I like surrounding myself with those people. And I think as I've got older, I've got better at doing that. And I think when I was younger, I was probably, and I think a lot of people probably have the same thing where you do tend to surround yourself with negativity or people that can draw or take things from you. And you think you're helping them or you think they're going to change, but actually they don't.
Yeah.
And you're the one that you're the ones that suffers. And it could be in relationships and music relationships,
Okay. So tell us about your early days once you started to make music and what that was like for you.
Early days, what, writing or
Writing,
yeah,
producing,
producing.
after leaving Joe Hart.
After leaving Joe Hart, well, what I did first was I needed money because I was broke, so I signed on, and that gave me a bit of a window. And I remember going into the Dole office and saying, look, do you have any jobs that I'm a musician? And they're sort of going, well, we don't really have any of this in our criteria, but we can see that you're actively doing it, and so I lived off that a bit, and I started doing session work. So I was playing in bands. I started playing percussion and backing vocals on this support tour. And I was going around the country and into Europe and stuff like that. And then I was doing keyboards and backing vocals as well in another band. And it was a great experience, to be fair. We were playing the Shepherd's Bush Empire, and, I was playing some relatively cool places. And I learned a lot from it. But I also then sort of realised with the sessioning that it was quite lonely. And it also was like I was just a hired guy in the back. And I liked it. But in between that, I was writing. So one of the guys who I was sessioning for, I wrote a song with, and that ended up, he was an independent artist, and it ended up being a single. I didn't produce it, I just co-wrote it, because I wasn't known as a producer at all. I mean, I wasn't really, I guess, even producing. I was just, recording, but I didn't have anything under my belt. And that ended up being released in Japan and ended up being a sort of mini hit out there. And that was my first sort of thing, alongside another thing, which is really embarrassing. But it was my then publisher, Sarah Liversidge, and she worked at the BBC. And my mate was in a band at the BBC. I met her through that. And she got me doing like TV music and stuff like that. So I did this song. Do you remember the Tweenies?
Yes.
Right.
The little kids program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing show. One of the yeah, very highbrow. So basically, I ended up writing a song for the Tweenies called Wiggle It. You never heard of it, obviously. You wouldn't have heard of it. It was a track on their album anyway. But yeah.
So it wasn't a Simon Cowell record?
No, no, it was BBC. It's BBC.
Okay,
it's BBC. But so that was like, it was just a kid's song, basically. But again, that was probably one of my first cuts, which is like, what?
So you're doing TV sync music.
So I was doing
now.
TV, so I was singing music. And then I was doing, other little idents and stuff like that. And again, that was helping me out a bit.
Yeah.
But again, my love wasn't really in that because it was writing to a thing rather than writing songs. I wasn't writing lyrics that I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. But again, it was a means to an end. Around that time, I was recording everyone I could possibly find and say, look, come in for £100 or whatever. I'd write with them and I'd record with them.
So wait, you were paying people to come in?
No, they were paying me like occasionally,
so
like £100. Well, not actually write, but if they were recording, then I would. But otherwise, it was free. I'd say, come in and write with me. Obviously, I'm not charging them to write. Yeah. But recording that, if they want to do an EP or something like that. Yeah. And then after that, then my now manager John was managing this guy called Pete Dupont. He was like a singer-songwriter guy, and I was working a lot with him and getting paid to record a lot of his stuff. And then John got offered to work to manage Wiley, and that's how I then hooked up with Wiley. Yeah. And then it was a completely different thing, but because I'd done a lot of the sample stuff in Manchester, and I had such a range of music. I was then sort of involved with him. I
remember that because I remember thinking, I think around that time is when I started to become aware of you. And I was like, I was aware that you were working across different genres. Yeah. And I was kind of like, oh, you went from that to that. And you're doing that and you're doing that, but you're doing it well. And a lot of times when producers try and jump genres, they don't do it very well. But you're really good at both. So I was like, I'll keep an eye on this guy. I might at least get in the studio with him.
Well, I think it was the fact that I was my dad, obviously, with being through music, had seen some pretty dark stuff, especially in the 60s and 70s. The sort of stuff that went on about, was terrible. I mean, the music industry got slightly better, but it was still can be completely sharky. But he was also like, look, just watch your back, and you just got to be careful where you're moving and how you're moving. So I think within that, he was like, don't be pigeonholed. He was like, you don't want to be like me. Like he was like, I've been stuck in doing, this thing, because he ended up doing, different sort of, kids music himself, but indirectly of me, weirdly enough. and he did well out of it, but he was stuck in this world and couldn't get out of it.
Mm.
So for me, I saw him go through that, and I was like, I don't want to be the same. I want to try and diversify as much as I can and not be held down. I hated being held down. I hated saying, because you know what it's like. Everyone looks at whatever you do and go, well, if you've done one record, that's the sound of that person. It's not.
Yeah.
I knew know so many producers who can do so many different styles and do it great as well.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're known for one thing, they keep going back and back to the same thing, and then they always end up in that same box.
Yeah.
No one wants to be in a box.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. So the Wiley thing really opened up, a lot, and through him, I was fortunate. I was then met Scorcher and Wretch 3-2 and Kano and Getz and all those guys. And I was working with all the grime scene and Roll Deep, and I knew Target, and we were at the time, around that same time, I then published by Sarah, and MySpace was around, and then Ed Sheeran turns up.
Big segue.
There you
Tell
go.
us about that. Tell us about what that was like, when you found Ed on MySpace, and what was it about him when you saw him on MySpace that made you believe this is someone that I really want to work with, that could be a successful artist?
I mean, for me, it was just, he was completely unique and completely different to anything else I'd seen. And for me, my gut just went, this is incredible. The first song I heard was You Need Me, I Don't Need You.
Mm-hmm.
And that lyric, just that one bit, you need me, man, I don't need you. I thought that is so clever.
It's funny, Darkus quoted that lyric on the
Did
podcast when he spoke about missing out on him.
At Island, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Darkus. But, a great man, Darkus. But yeah, I think, it literally hairs on the back of the neck moment, and completely, I was like, I've got to work with this guy, this kid, and he just moved to London. He was just 17 years old. I was working with Wiley and all that at that time, and I picked up Ed from the local station. He turned up, it's so Ed, red hair and his traveling guitar on his back, and his little guitar thing, like a violin. It was so small, and his backpack, his rucksack, and everything he sings about. You know what I mean? It was just him. His Nike trainers, his high tops, and his baggy little thing, little hood, and and he was just like, what? This is just, And then when his lyrics were about that and stuff. The first song, we went back to the studio, and the first song we wrote that day was called "The City," and we was talking about stuff. And I was like, well, you've just moved to London. Let's write a song about you moving to the city. And we were talking about how. Basically, that's the song. It's the city, and cracks in the pavement and the skyscrapers and what's happening. But trying to find subtext in that, underneath those lyrics to talk about, it's quite lonely and it can be sad and it can be quite daunting. And you're 17 and, people are smoking weed on the side and whatever else is going on, he's a young lad. And, we just wanted to put that in the song and just keep it something real, I guess. And then our relationship just grew from then on, really. And he loved the fact that I was working the grime scene. I was doing a whole album with Wiley, at that time. I then started doing some extra engineering as well as a separate job with this guy called Nelly Hooper.
Okay. A guy called Nelly Hooper.
The
legend.
An absolute legend. And he was, for me, quite iconic, and I was a fledgling producer, I guess. Writing and for him I engineered. So he got a job with to produce Paloma Face album. So I ended up being engineer on that and actually producing as well on that record. And I learned loads from that guy. I mean, he'd work, he was part of Massive Attack and Bristol whole, dub scene and all that, and he worked with Bjork. Yeah. Madonna, U2, people that I was like, wow, so I could aspire to, and the way he worked, it was all the ears, all about the ears, but also the feel, all about the feel, and I'd learned, all these flags were appearing again and again each time on different things. Ed, same thing, it was about feel, it was about those lyrics, it was about the moment, Wiley, same thing. All these greats in their own fields, was all the same things. Yeah. So I kept on seeing it again and again. And yeah, used to go up with Roll Deep to Nelly's studio when Nelly wasn't there. We basically just lock ourselves in with Twin and like, you know, Target and Shotorama and just all those guys and just make music.
Yeah.
You know, just make music.
That must be an incredible time.
Brilliant times. Just sitting there, just, you know.
So when you were working with Nelly,
Yeah.
what did you take away? Like, obviously you took away feel and you took away, you know, but in practical terms of your songwriting, in terms of your production, were there lessons that you learned from working with him?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was about the finessing of stuff, and I think he's you know, because he comes from that dubby sort of world. I remember, you know, obviously, and at that point, actually, dubstep was making a real moment in music as well. So I was trying, even in the Paloma Faith record, I was like, let's try and, through Nelly's influences, what's the modern way of doing dub? So me as the engineer would go away and get on Massive and try and work out how to do the, you know, make my own, you know, filters and stuff and make my own sounds to create dub noises and stuff like that. And with, you know, it was sort of trying to, you know, as an engineer, I was trying to understand where Nelly's head was and how I can be the engineer to him to help his vision as the producer make sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting process. And then you got Paloma, who's got her thing where she's like, I want violin, strings, trumpets, you know, shove it all, let's go for it, you know. So it's trying to find that balance, I think, all the time. But it was the sonics that were interesting, you know. We were experimenting, and Nelly liked to experiment. It was like, it wasn't just happy with one snare. It wasn't that snare sounds not right to me, Jake. We need to change that. It's not right. And I was like, okay. And then we'd flick through things and stuff. But, you know, again, Nelly came from that sample mentality of going through records and finding great breaks or whatever, you know. So I learned a lot. I learned even more about, I guess, the sonics again on another level, like more intricacies, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that's missing now with a lot of young producers that are coming through?
I do. I really do. I think because there's so much. Like you got Splice, for example. And it's so easy. I mean, for songwriting, right? I think there are two flip sides to it. For songwriting, I think it's super easy just to go on and make a song really quick. Pardon me. But I think it can take out I guess the individuality of it, you know, the experimentation. Records, why do you want every record sounding the same?
Yeah.
You know, but I know that within the industry, you know, big record labels and stuff, when you have a hit, they're like, well, we've just had this hit from XY. We want the same.
Replicate it.
We want to replicate it.
Yeah.
Right. But why do you have to replicate it?
Yeah.
You know, why don't you do something different? I mean, funnily enough, actually, in a pop world, like I think Sabrina Carpenter did it incredibly well. I mean, like you got her first song, which is actually a Splice sample.
Yeah.
It's like they've just literally, it is that loop. The song is the loop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's a huge hit, massive, worldwide smash.
Non-stop. She's not going away.
No, she's not. But, you know, and you know, you could, you know, where's the argument? Well, it worked. It's a hit, right? And that wasn't made someone made a loop and they just literally went, and it's the song, basically. But then Sabrina's next song wasn't anything like the song. It was a completely different style, vibe, sonics. And that was, for me, was actually really clever because I thought, well, they went here, but they didn't do what I thought they would do and keep it going on that same disco flex. They actually went somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, you know, the tools are there, but I think if you're writing, great, smash it out the park. You can just go for it. I don't think be scared of it, but I think try and, if you can, experiment as much as you can and create something new and individual, because you don't know what you're going to fall on.
And you think there's a fear of that? Because, you know, I was always a fan of being able to identify a producer by their kick, their snare, by the guitar, by the way they've filtered the sound. You're like, oh, that's a Pharrell sound. That's a Timbaland sound. That's a, you know, this person, that person. Do you think people are fearful to find their individuality now?
I mean, I don't know. It's a really good question. I can't really, you know, I think from my point of view, I think, you know, it's it's always scary because when you're associated with the record, you want whatever you've done to be great and good, and you want. Personally, I've never really chased, I never chased it for the money thing, purely because of the fact that I'm a music person first. I'm a songwriter, I guess, and I've been in bands and a creative first. I wasn't thinking if I wanted money, then I probably would have done a completely different job, and been a banker or I don't know something else. Who knows? But I'm a creative person, so I think it's like for the all the elements of what you're doing in music, you've got to sort of, I guess you just have to sort of find your way each time, but it can be scary because you don't want to sacrifice yourself. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. You don't want to put yourself into a position where you're giving up what you are, the essence of yourself. But you also want it to be identifiable. But then I also don't want to be in a box. So I don't know.
I hear you.
Yeah.
What's your process like when you're creating a record? Every producer has their own way of working. What's your unique process? Like we've had Mo Samuels on here talk about, he always starts with the keys. It starts with the keys for him.
Yeah.
And then from there, he'll progress what the song looks like. Then from once he has a song, he'll build a track around the keys, the chords, and the song. What's your process like?
To get drunk. No. No, I think the thing is just like trying to create an environment that's open to experimentation. I think, like I said before, I think the feel is the most important thing. I think, and I've said this before, but, we are human beings. And I think that we have errors in us. We're not perfect. And I think that's what's beautiful about, trying to make a record. I think imperfection is perfection sometimes because we're all imperfect. And I think music, if it's too perfect and too processed and too squashed and it can work in so many ways, right? If you're doing a dance record, then I get it. You want it to be right in your face and this is what it is. Listen, you can produce records in so many different ways, If it's drill, it's drill. It's 140 and it's dat, and there's not much going on.
Yeah.
But that's a drill record, but that's stylistic stuff. But from my personal experiences, when I'm producing a record, it's really a matter of making sure the artist is in control and that a clear vision's made. I've been lucky to work on whole albums, you see, as well. I haven't really done a lot of like individual singles, but I prefer the process of an album. Like when, like the Libertines, for example, working with a band like that, I could relate to it because I came from bands. Yeah. But the whole, the Libertines have a certain sound. It needs to be, Pete's out of tune all the time. Yeah. But that's part of it.
Part of what?
That's part of the flavour. Yeah. That's the colour. Yeah. That's the,
And do you think music's become too perfect? Because I say this to like even the producer I manage sometimes.
Yeah.
No, leave that voice cracking because that's the flavour, as you put it. That's the money. That's what gives the emotion. But quite often we're seeing in music now, producers making a perfect record, taking out the breath, taking out the crack, taking out all of these little elements which create the uniqueness. I always say, well, Mary J. Blige, if you make her sound perfect, she's not Mary J. Blige anymore. She's just some every R&B singer that's out there. But what makes her special is the voice cracks, is the bum notes, is all of this stuff that adds the flavor. Do you think music is becoming too perfect now?
I think there's definitely an argument for that, for sure. I think because we're living on the edge of an AI situation, which is I personally find quite scary. But you also have to work out how you embrace it or how you deal with it, or how you work within music, especially. I mean, I heard record labels have been releasing 30,000 tracks, AI tracks made and released on Spotify alone already. I don't know if that's like I don't know what the exact stat is, but it's incredible. This stuff is going on, but like playlists for like probably bedroom play, which is, I don't know. I mean, what is that? I mean, it's crazy.
There are conversations around the fact that so many people have been released from labels and have lost
Yeah.
their jobs working at labels because there's a theory that's out there, conspiracy theory, that
Right, yeah, well, yeah, let's go there.
that you know, the majors are really going to start pumping out this AI stuff, and with the DSPs, that's pretty much going to be the business model where they can just make lots of money because they don't have to pay royalties and so on and so forth. But you know, the rest of the industry will head towards independence, the kind of more independent route, looking at distributors and fan first audiences. So, you know, direct consumer, engaging the consumer directly. These are all conspiracy theories that are out there. What's your thoughts around, I was going to get into it later, but what's your thoughts around AI and the way in which it's impacting the music industry, the way in which it poses a threat to a producer, a songwriter? Because you've spent all this time, you know, being in the studio with greats, being around greats, learning your craft, honing your craft, understanding feel, for an automated machine to come in and do effectively what you do in 2.6 seconds.
Yeah. That's quick, isn't it? I mean, yeah, I personally think it's a little scary. I mean, I don't think there's enough policing at the moment. I don't think the industry are ready or prepared, you know, that well yet for it. I think there's too many people who know how to make a lot of money, namely the big boys at the top, who are going to use it as much as they can to reline their pockets. I think that's the basic truth of it. So for people like, you know, myself, other producers, writers, new artists, I think that, you know, you've got to understand it as much as you can. I think don't run away from it, because it's not going anywhere. It's only going to be more of it. But it's also how you use it. I mean, there's going to be so many. I don't know what the laws are at the moment. I mean, you know, you can go onto a website now and you can download anyone's voice. You know, from Beyonce to Ed Sheeran to whoever you want. And you can literally sing, and the voice can sound exactly like someone else.
Is that a good thing for songwriters if they want to pitch a record? So say you want to pitch to Rihanna.
I think it is. I think in that sense, yeah. I think it is, because it's another tool, isn't it? I mean, you know, you can't fight the tools. You know, the tools are there to help you. You know, it's like when the drum machine came along, all the drummers were like, hold on a second. So, you know, it's a tool. It's going to be used. I don't think it's going to put people out of work, that for sure. But for pitches, I know a lot of people that do that already, and put, you know, different voices on it, because it can sell the records. And at the end of the day, you know, I used to hire session singers, so it saved me a bit of money. You know what I mean? Or someone else a bit of money, and I guess in that respect. But then it puts a session singer out of a job.
Oh, this is the thing.
This is it, right? So,
because then the ecosystem becomes
something, and then they're suddenly not getting food. You know, you know.
What do you think the solution is?
I don't. Oh, mate.
Policing it?
What do I think? What do I think? Wow. I don't know. I think I need to do a bit more research to comment. But you know, I think it's more about governments. I think it's more about, you know, I'm part of the Ivers Academy and that sort of stuff, and we're actively trying to fight for songwriters and people within music to be aware of what's going on. You know, there's not enough information for, you know, newer writers and artists. I don't think they don't know half of the information. They don't know what PRS is or PPL is, or how they get paid, or what their rights are. You know, there needs to be some sort of thing. There's been more awareness, I guess, but how do you do that? You have to promote it and tell everyone about it and something like that, I guess.
So that's a great segue to tell us about how the money does flow as a songwriter, Jake. So, you know, how does it work as a songwriter? I want to get back to talking about some of the projects you worked on, but I think it's a great opportunity to look at how the money flows. So, you know, if you have a hit record, there's this assumption that next week, you know, you have a #1 record. Next week, you're driving a Lamborghini, Ferrari, you're paid, you're rich. But the reality is very different. You know, we were speaking about it before, that it can take 2 years plus for the money to come through. How does that work? What organizations do you need to be signed up to? How does that work from a publishing point of view, if you're producing a master point? What does that look like?
I mean, it's really hard to make money from music, to be fair. I think, a lot of people tend to think that, you have one record, and you get it in the charts and you're suddenly a millionaire. That's
Yeah.
not the case at all. And it's a lot harder than it was before. I mean, I was very lucky because I was like the end of people were buying physical records. They were, I know vinyl's making a bit of a resurgence and even CDs and tapes a little bit, but nowhere near what it was. It was all physical. Obviously, we were then fighting the illegal streaming thing.
Yeah.
And Spotify managed to sneak in with that. Well, it's not illegal streaming. This is, and people get paid, but they're not obviously letting anyone know how much they're getting paid. There's no real information on there. I think for a new writer, it's incredibly tough, to make any money. I mean, I know what it's like. I have a studio. If you're a producer, you've got to find a space. Someone comes over, they maybe want a cup of tea, and maybe they're hungry, so maybe they want to grab a sandwich. You know what I mean? So you end up feeding people sometimes, and then maybe they need picking up from the station, or whatever it might be. All these things add up, and you work out every day how much it's costing you, the electrics and the whatever and the da-da-da. So you're sort of out of pocket before you've even started. And I just feel like it's really the record labels that need to step in and actually maybe support the writers, because they're getting all it's like free labor. It's like, go away, guys, and write us I don't know, how many songs? It doesn't matter. We're the record label. Write 200 songs. Go away with all these different people and write and come back. We're not going to pay you anything to do it. All the writers, all the producers, all the time. We're just going to open the doors and go, we got 200 songs to pick from now. Thanks, guys. It cost us absolutely nothing.
But then
It's terrible.
once they pick the song,
Yeah.
people get paid, right?
Well, yeah, but if you're one of those writers who didn't, or maybe, like I've had it a few times where I've written 20, 30, 40 songs with one artist, and for whatever reason, they get dropped.
Yeah.
The song never comes out. It never sees the light of day.
Yeah.
And I've invested my time in that person because I believe in them.
Yeah.
But the label didn't, or the timing wasn't right, or they didn't have enough stats, because it's just a numbers game. And for a lot of these artists, they're just picked up and dropped, which is horrendous. And I have seen it all the time.
So do you think there should be like a day rate for writers
Yeah,
to
I
go
do.
in the studio?
I do.
Or...
I do. I really do. I think there should be some sort of rate that the label pay. There's a budget set aside for those artists, for the songs, to say it doesn't need to be much. We're not asking to break the bank, but just for writers and producers to get, I don't know, 70 quid a day or whatever it is. From the label, just invoice, bang, done. Will they do it? Come on, labels. Put your hands in your pockets.
There you go. Jake Gosling's
Here we
asking you
go.
labels.
I know, well,
no,
listen,
no more Ed Sheeran records until you do that.
I mean, I'm very blessed because of my back catalogue.
Yeah.
But I've had to be on the dole. I've had to work and do everything I possibly can to try and make some money in order to have some success to do what I do. And listen, when you do have a hit, yes, you do get paid, but there's a lot of other people getting way more paid than you.
Yeah.
Even Ed. I mean,
And how long does it take for that money to come through to you? Because, you have a hit.
Yeah.
Let's say Ed Sheeran, One Direction, whoever.
That
ends up on radio in rotation. The album tops the charts. How does that money filter through to you? And what way does the money come through to Jake Gosling once Ed Sheeran's had number one, or once your song has been played on Radio 1 a million times? Like, how does that come through to you?
Well, there's different revenue streams. So if you're the songwriter, then there's the PRS, which is the Performing Rights Society. So if you're a songwriter, you do need to sign up to that. That's the first thing you should do. And it's not very much to sign up to. It's probably the best money you'd ever spend.
It's £100. Shout out to PRS.
Shout out PRS. Big ups. But it's a really important move because of the fact that they collect the money. If you're not signed up to it, you're not going to see anything at all. And it's just, once you've done it, and you're a member for life, And there are many benefits from doing it, huge benefits from doing it. And you have to just register your song. And the other side is PPL, which is more if you're on the recording side of it. So if you're the producer, or you're the guitarist, or the session drummer, or the singer, or the engineer, or the orchestral person, or if you're making basically an audible contribution to a record, That's the PPL, and you should sign up to that. And you also get a royalty for that. So that's another revenue stream, which is great. But in terms of that money coming through to through to you, it can take a while. I mean, I think America's about 2 years.
Yeah.
UK is probably a year. Yeah, year and a bit. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah.
So, and also you get paid in different amounts for different things. So, like Radio 1, is, I don't know what it is, but per song, every time a song's played, it's, I don't know.
I think it's around 70 quid.
70 quid
a play.
a play?
That gets divided between all the writers on the song.
Correct, yeah. And I think, and then Radio 2 is more, probably like 90 quid, because they've got more. It's all down to listeners, how many listeners
the radio station has.
Yeah. Same with TV. I mean, the more viewers, the more money, because the more the license costs, and then you get paid from that. And then you can do, there's syncs when you can get things on Netflix, or, I still get calls now occasionally for Ed songs or songs I've written and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, we want to use it in, Belgium, The Voice or something. Yeah. So you get like a little flat fee, and they get a license to use it for 3 years or whatever it might be, which are great. And if you think about it, hold on, we wrote that in a few hours and recorded it in 3 days or a day, Yeah. So if you think, if you do the math, it's like, it's great, but it's all the other days,
And going back to your earlier point, is that why record labels kind of say, well, you did it in a few hours, you'd maybe record it over a couple of days, and it's going to have this lifespan of 10, 12, 5, whatever, X amount of years. Is that the reason why they say, well, we don't need to pay you for the time you're doing in the studio? Is that the trade-off, do you think? I'm playing devil's advocate.
Well, no, sure, I get it. Listen, I think, to be fair, I think no, because those songs are generating so much income.
Yeah.
They're making more money for the record label if it's on a major compared to, an independent artist who then will have their rights and will own their own music and can do what they want with it. But obviously what majors do is they open the doors as well. They can really push those buttons. And if an artist needs to be on the worldwide stage, to do those numbers, to get through, obviously the climate has changed a lot. We got TikTok, we didn't have that before. So now you can hit the world as long as your algorithm's right. You know what I mean? You can hit the world with something and your music can go viral overnight, and it's maintaining that. So you can do it independently. There's so many ways, but yeah. Don't know where I was going. My head suddenly.
I want to get back to talking about the Plus album. Such a huge album, defining moment for British music industry and for your own career. Did you have any idea at the time how impactful that album would be when you were making it, for yourself and for Ed's career as well, and for the music industry as a whole?
I mean, I had a feeling it was like, I felt great about the record. I mean, I was terrified because I didn't know if I was going to actually be producing his first album, because even though I'd worked on all the EPs and other stuff before, I'd done the Wiley stuff. I was doing engineering with Nelly and stuff, but I wasn't really known, I guess.
Yeah.
And to sign a record deal, when he signed to Atlantic, I knew those guys quite well because of Wiley, because he was signed there as well. So I was bigging up Ed massively. So I think, I was like, look, here's my guy. So I was sort of part of, I guess, what Ed was doing, which helped. But, I did hear that they played it to other producers to see. And in their defense, I don't know who they are, but if they're listening, I love you to pieces. Because they turned around and were like, it sounds great. I don't think you need me on this, which is remarkable. What an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. And lead by example, right?
Yeah.
Lead by example. So, it was an incredible moment. I think looking back at it, you never realize how big anything's going to be, do you? You're in the moment. But it was just like a party after party after party. I mean, thankfully, we'd done so much hard work. I mean, Ed is one of the most hardworking people in the music industry I've ever met. So I think that his ethos, again, manifesting. He'd already had the names for the albums when he was 17, 18.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, plus, minus, more. He had it there. He had it all
I
laid
didn't know
out.
that. That's insane.
Manifesting. There you go. Bang. He already had it lined up. He already said he was gonna sell out more shows, I think, than James Blunt. He'd said it. He said, "I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna play Wembley." He was saying this stuff. And that literally was coming out of his mouth, and I was going, "Yes, you are," because I'm a similar type of character. I'm like, "We're gonna do this. This is wicked. Yes, let's go." And yeah, we of course, you know, we came up against the no's and the not sure's and those sort of people.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the journey, isn't it? And you have to fight through it. And it just skyrocketed. Once we did the Collaborations #5 album, I said, Dad, don't pay me for that. Let's just work on it together. We'll just split it 50-50, put it out independently. And we'll just split the writing. We'll do everything just easy peasy, you know, which was, a great move. It just went like great, it was charting.
Yeah.
And this was all independently. I think we put it through TuneCore at the time. And
he was gigging like crazy. I remember him coming to a gig and like saying, "Oh, we were like, do you want to have a drink?" And after he finished playing, he was like, "No, I've got 3 more tonight."
Got 3 more
He's
shows.
like, but does anyone want to buy my
does anyone
want to buy my CD?
Anyone want to buy a CD? Yeah, no, literally.
And I was like, wow, that work ethic. It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still the same now. I mean, I can email him and he emails within half an hour, an hour. I mean, literally, I've never known anything, unless he's on a plane or doing something. But even then, he's found a way to do it. It's remarkable. I mean, he doesn't need to. I mean, he's a megastar now. But he's still the same old Ed, which is incredible, in so many ways. Okay, he's been through the industry and he's seen it and all the rest of it. We all know what that's like. But underneath it all is, the same guy, which is amazing.
When you produced Thinking Out Loud, track went on to make history, first record to hit 500 million streams on Spotify. What was your creative mindset? And did you get a sense it become as timeless as it became? And did you, it's a record that's, you can't go to a wedding that's not played. Right?
I know, yeah.
you must be like, oh, there's my record again.
Yeah. There's a few weddings on that one.
Did you sense it was going to become such a huge and timeless record?
No, actually. I mean, I knew that wasn't even going to be on the record, actually. It was a very last-minute record. The same, yeah, I've always found that with albums. It always tends to be the last couple or few songs that end up coming later to the game, that for some reason just maybe because the artist is in that headspace, or we're all in the headspace where it's like, you know what, the pressure's off, the album's done, so you're not like worried too much about it. I mean, it felt like a great record, don't get me wrong. I was like, but you're so in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was recorded so fast. Ed phoned me. He'd wrote it with Amy in Wales, I think, at hers. He phoned me and he sent me a voice note and he was like, "I've written this song, I know the album's sort of there, but can I come in and can I record it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, let's do it." Played me this sort of thing down the phone. I was like, "Sounds great, sounds sick, let's go." Recorded it, did it in a day. It was like a few hours, and but I didn't need much. There didn't need to be much production. It was more about the song and the sentiment and the lyric, and the rest of it was just a backbone, just to sort of give it. Because it had that sort of waltzy feel to it. It's like a 3/4, type of vibe. I just wanted to make it simple, and I just used like old school like sample drums for the beat. It's not a live kit. It's just but they're individual live samples that I used to make it, and layered it with a couple of things. I can't remember if the bass was live or not. And then my dad, and then Ed was like, "What's your dad up to?" I was like, "I don't know. Well, he's from like the 70s, 80s. He's from that era. Should we? Let's get the feel.
He's old.
He's old. He's got it. He's got. Well, it's the way he plays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?" And so he said, "Can you call your dad and get him to come down and jump on the record?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll phone my dad." So I phoned Dad. I said, "Dad, do you want to play on this record?" And he's like, "Yeah, what is it?" I said, "It's very simple. It's like 4 chords and just sort of jam. Can you just jam over it?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." Jumped in the car, came down, recorded a few takes of him just doing, but it's really tasty. If you hear the record, you can hear these little flexy PG, we call him. We're like, go PG, come on.
How did he feel about, being on such a successful record?
Yeah, well, I mean, blown away by it, obviously. I mean, I spoke to Ed the other day, and I think it's just made history for the biggest selling single ever.
Wow.
And I think it's about to go double diamond, which is
20 million.
20 million.
That's
I mean,
insane.
what? Like, it's crazy. Yeah, it's quite mad. I mean, I remember in the early days, it was, it does hit your head a bit weirdly. You know what I mean? When things, I'm sitting there, and obviously because no one really knows who I am. I'm the invisible man, really.
Yeah.
I'm the, behind the scenes making the records and
Yeah.
writing on the records and doing stuff. But I'm not Ed, and I'm not the face. I'm seeing Wembley Stadium, and I'm just like fucking thousands and thousands of people singing songs that you've written or
85,
worked
90,000
on,
people
and
there.
then and they're just oblivious, and you walk around, it's like it's quite nuts. But I think for anyone, you have to sort of get over it and not have that ego thing where you're like, oh yeah, you just got to be like, I'm always thinking, well, what's next?
Yeah, how do you stay grounded in that
What's
situation?
next?
Because, I think one of the things why we get along, why I've always really been drawn to you is, I remember before all the success, crashing Brit Award parties with you, and I won't say too much on the podcast.
Let's make this a good one. Let's get those numbers up, mate.
But we had some fun. We had some fun back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And then you had all this success, and you were exactly the same.
Oh.
And it was like nothing had changed.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they'll have this level of success and their ego kicks in, or something, there's this change in the person, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know if I recognize you anymore. But you've managed to stay really grounded and to be the same fun-loving, boisterous, cheeky Jake that I met, 15 or so years ago.
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage to maintain that?
I think, to be fair, I mean, I think it's probably going back to my childhood, really. I think it's because I was surrounded with some insane sort of artists and musicians. And I think just seeing them as normal people made me realize that no matter who you are, you're still just a person. We all the same, really.
Yeah.
We have different skills, and we have different things that we bring into the equation. But we're all just the same, really. So we just need to get on and move on and make it exciting and happy and fun rather than get involved in our own heads and go around in circles, I think, and keeping good people around you. Like I said, I think it's important to have a good bunch, a good team around you, people that you respect, people you look up to, and I think that's the way to keep sort of more of a level head, really. I mean, we all have our moments, and we all go a bit, I can get a bit excited, but that's me. I've always been a bit like that. But yeah, I think it's just about moving on each time and thinking that, and along the road, there are still so many knocks as well, to be fair. And I think, success, has its, it's a saying, ups and downs, it really does. And you see it, and I see it, and it can be, very difficult. But you have to try and keep a strong mind and strong focus and ride through those bumps. Because no matter who you are, we all have them. We all have them. That's the truth of it. I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, we're going to probably talk about it later with the record label thing, but maybe we'll save it for then, or we can talk about it now, whatever you want to do. But it's to do with the sort of mental health side of it. Yeah. And I'd really love to have, like, tied into the contract a mental health thing so that you've got support from day one of signing an artist.
Wow.
Actually that in place.
What does that look like? There's a
I'm
lot
still
of talk
figuring out how I
around
do this. Yeah. I don't know if any label's done it yet, so hopefully no one else is going to copy me before I do it.
And is that something, because obviously, you are involved in recording One Direction, doing records with them, and obviously we saw what happened recently with Liam. And there's a lot of conversation around the support that he may or may not have received from record labels that could or could not have been afforded to him. Was that something that helped to trigger that? Was that something that
I think it was part of it, for sure. You know, I mean, I knew Liam well, and you know, I'd seen him grow up as a kid. You know, he was so young and so talented, and it was a shock for so many people. I wasn't the closest person to him, you know, but I'd worked with him, and I loved him very much. And you know, it was a really hard, horrible thing to hear. You know, for his family and his friends, and you know, his fans, everyone. You know, and it's tragic, really. Really tragic. And I think for someone like him, you know, I would fly out on the road with One Direction when they were, you know, playing in, you know, different places in America, recording or trying to get them to record. We had studios that were set up in hotel rooms and stuff because they just couldn't leave the hotel. They'd walk out the door and it would just be mayhem.
I remember being in Cannes once,
Right.
and they were doing some teen awards. I can't remember what the awards were called. And I remember trying to walk towards the beach, and you could not get down the road for the amount of screaming and fainting girls that were in the street. And I was just like, that was my only real experience of seeing
100%.
One Direction and the fandom that existed. It was like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was like, I guess it's like the Beatlemania. I mean, they were the biggest band in the world, weren't they? And it was just crazy. The change I saw through the band was sad, actually, because when they started, when I first knew them, they were super young. They were all like really just young kids having a laugh and just joking around, and you could really feel that energy was. And slowly, you know, through the years, with all, I think you know, mainly the fame. I think, really, to be fair, I think it really got to them. And I'm sure for anyone, and for someone like Liam, he wears his heart on his sleeve. You know, he's a very open person. You know, he'd say how it is, and he wouldn't hold back. He'd be like this and this and this, and that's what everyone loved about him. Great songwriter and just a brilliant guy, like amazing person. But he had troubles with himself. You know, I think the fame thing was definitely something that really overcome him. Tragic. But yeah, that's why I think, you know, I understand the importance of you know, with success and within music and with that isn't really addressed, I don't think, at all, really.
No, it's not.
So my thinking is that how can I, you know, I'm seeing it on a daily level. I've got artists coming into me, you know, on a daily basis with, you know, ranging from right at the beginning, before even the beginning, up to ones who are already established. And I've seen it again and again, that change. But if that support was in there from the day one, then, you know, it would dramatically help, you know.
Even certain artists that are coming from, you know, certain situations in life.
100%.
So I meet artists sometimes, I'm like, you're suffering post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Disorder.
Yeah.
But there's no support for that.
There is no support. And so I think if I could tie that into a record deal, you know, so you've got that as a bolt-on, you've got support from day one, it would be an incredible thing to have. I mean, you don't have to do it, but wouldn't it be amazing to have that from day one? I mean, that's my aim. So I'm trying to work out how to do it. So if anyone's got any ideas, hit me up.
Hear that, people?
Hear that,
Speak
people.
to Jake.
Yeah, please.
I want to talk to you about lawsuits very quickly before we go on to your...
luckily, I can talk about it now.
Before we go on to your record label, you know, creating incredible records with Ed, and then, you know, having fantastic success, and then being taken to court and accused of plagiarism. How does that make you feel? And what were your thoughts when that happened?
I was pretty scared. I mean, you know, you see, you know, I'm a Netflix guy, so it's like, you know, I'm automatically seeing the Netflix thing with, like, you know, the American court, and here we go, and you're being served. You know, in my head, it was a whole movie. But no, it was really scary. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really understand it. All I knew was that when Ed's lawyers contacted me, they said, look, we've got this under control, but we know at the moment that you can't answer the door to people. If someone turns up at your studio with a thing, then, because they actually physically have to serve you. Because I was in the UK, it was a lot easier. There were different, so how they do it is they sue you on different things. So there was the songwriting, which was one case, and everyone around that. So I wasn't part of the songwriting, right? So that was Amy and Ed, but then it's their publishers and the record label, right? And then the other court case was me. So it was like the production, so the sound of the record, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking here, whoa, like this is going to kill me, like financially destroy me. You know, I don't know where this is going, and it's America, and it's an unknown territory. I don't know what's going to be happening. So I literally was quite terrified. You know, it hit Amy and Ed pretty hard as well, really hard. And I think it was more to do with the fact that we couldn't believe that there was a case. Like we couldn't we were like, I was in the room, Ed was in the room. I mean, Amy wasn't, but she wrote the song. But in terms of what that made up, we were like, you know, there was no reference to Marvin Gaye. There was nothing there. So we knew, we were like, this is complete fabrication. But we had to, like, obviously, if someone sees it, you've got to prove it, right? So honestly, it went on for years. You know, and I think emotionally, you have those moments where you're awake at night and you're dreading the worst, but you can't talk about it. You're told not to talk about it. You've got to seal the box. You can't discuss anything. I can't talk to Ed about it. No one can talk to each other. We're all like silenced because if we say something, we're in jeopardy. So it's a bit of a mayhem. And then you know, I had to talk to the lawyers. So I was I was the judge. I wasn't the judge. I was the guy on the stand. What are they called? You know,
witness.
Witness. There you go. So I was a witness being interviewed about it as the producer, about what happened in the room on the day and the song and all that sort of stuff. So I had to go to New York when the court case was happening and wait my turn to go in. They wouldn't let me in the courtroom beforehand, you know, and it was like, I think for us, it was more to do with the fact that we had to win this, not just for ourselves, but for the songwriting community.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I remember talking to Ed about it, and we were like, this is a really powerful thing. This is a real moment in music here. Because if we win this, which we should win, as a songwriter, there are only a certain amount of chords, right? There's only a certain amount of melodies. There's only a certain space within, you know, the keys. That's all you've got to work with. And if you put two things that don't work together, they don't work together. So there are certain frameworks of the way you write a song that has a structure, but those chords have been used a billion and billions and billions of times through from classical all the way through to now pop. And you hear the same four chords. I mean, Ed's a big, you know, I don't know if you've seen his videos when he's playing the same, he's playing the same four chords over so many different songs. So it goes to show that the chords are the chords, okay, but the chords were different. I mean, they were similar, but they were so different. The melodies weren't the same. The lyrics weren't the same. But it was fascinating, man. They were like in the court, you know, the Americans sort of like, you know,
drama.
Yeah, oh my God. Let's make America great. I'm like, what is this? You know, it's about a song.
Yeah.
And the guy's changing the notes, changing the key. Like, it's complete. I couldn't believe it. I mean, to be fair, I do think the court system in the UK is actually brilliant. It's in America, it's like, I don't know what's going to go on. It's like, you got to watch out. But in England, it actually has a very good system, I think. Because I was also here with the Shape of You case, and I was another witness on that with Ed here. But the whole process, it's just, honestly, it's horrific. But we got through it, we won, and hopefully never again.
And how does that affect your relationship with, you know, Ed and Amy and the other writers on the other record? Like, how does that affect your relationship? Are you able to have a relationship? Do you have to be mindful of how much time you spend together in case people are like, oh, they're plotting to get their answers straight? Like, how does that affect your relationship?
Well, to be fair, it didn't really affect it too much. I mean, you know, we just were told you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
We can talk about anything else.
Yeah.
We can hang out and we can do stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, Ed was on tour the whole time. So, you know, over the last few years, I haven't really seen Ed that much. I've seen him now and again, but he's the busiest man in the world. Trying to pin him down is quite tricky.
Yeah.
And he's got a young family as well now. So, you know, he's got all that to deal with. But yeah, I mean, you know, that didn't really affect it, to be fair.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I want to move on to your label, Studios, Sticky Studios, Golden Egg Records. It's still Golden Egg
Yeah,
Records.
yeah.
He gave me a look. I was like, did I get that
No,
wrong?
no. You did. No.
You know, you've moved into the business side
Yeah.
and really moved in. You've always been in and around it. We met when I was managing DJ at War, and you assigned him to your publishing,
That's right.
and you know, that's when we first started talking. So you've always had that business interest alongside
Yeah.
the musical side of you.
Yeah.
But this is a bigger thing. You've got a venture with Warner.
With Atlantic,
With
yeah.
Atlantic.
It's a JV with Atlantic, yeah.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about what that looks like and and what your plans are for the label?
I mean, it's super exciting. I mean, you know, I think it's again, a lot of it's about timing. I think I've learned so much, you know, through all the different, from doing this and doing that. Now I got to a point where I'm like, how do I create something that's really artist friendly? It's for the artist. It pushes them in, puts them in front place. They get the ownership of what that is, and they get the right support around what it is. I mean, you know, I have a reputation in the music industry, and I'd like to think hopefully it's a good one. You know, I've worked with lots of different people, and no one hopefully has gone like, you know, I haven't ripped anyone off. I haven't done this. I've got the best interest at heart, and that's who I am as a person. So it's like, with the label, I see this as a vehicle for the artist to basically drive the boat, you know, to take it on. And you know, we've got an amazing team around us, which who are music lovers. You know, I'm not chasing the TikTok sensations. I'm not looking for just for numbers. I'm really looking for, like, when I first saw an Ed Sheeran, you know, or a Dua Lipa. You know, it's the same thing. It's like looking for someone who has that raw talent and just that individuality to break through and to have something that I'm like, oh, you know what? This, my gut is going, yes. And that's really what I'm looking for. I can't really, there isn't really, like, you know, obviously it's hard working and it's all these sort of things.
Yeah.
But it's like having something unique that's like the voice or whatever it is.
And I'm guessing you're genre agnostic to it because of the fact that you create in so many different genres anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 100%. I have to, it has to have an identity. So it's called Hotel Records is the new one. So basically the whole idea is that you can stay and you can leave whenever you like. You know,
I love that.
Right? So, you know, and you're not tied in. If you want to check out, you just check out.
So what does that look like as a deal? Is that
so it's like
song by song,
it's
project
really,
by project?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like basically a place, a breathing ground for, mainly it's for new artists. It's not for established ones because they've already got what they got. But it's about people who are starting out, who need that support, who want mentoring or don't, whatever. But they've got the back of having Atlantic round the side. It's distributed through ADA, which is the Warner distribution. So it's their whole team. And then I've got an amazing guy called Craig Shadlow who signed Sam Fender and Holly Humberson, who's an amazing A&R guy, a real music lover. So we relate completely because I'm obviously from songwriting and songs and lyrics and that. And then A-List as well, my management team are involved as well. And they've got their experience.
Shout out to John Wolf and
shout out to John the crew. You know, and then there's Amy Webber, who's also on the Atlantic side. And then, you know, we've got Howard and Alice and, you know, the ADA team. It's just, you know, there's digital marketing. I mean, I met them all the other day, and it's just like having, you know, for me to have that framework of people who are professionals in their field. It's what I've needed, because Golden Egg was my first sort of label, fledgling, working it out. And I'm still keeping that as my really early development-y thing. Yeah. This is now up from that. So you can sign, you know, a single. It's more about, I'm not really albums. I'm more about building the artist. And it could be the point where I'm building them and then they fly wherever they want to go. Yeah. And if they want to stay, then even better. But, you know, I know what it's like. You know, at the end of the day, the money is their money. Yeah. You know, as soon as you sign a record deal, and you might think, oh, wicked, I could sign for, you know, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is. that's just a loan, so they have to pay it back, you know. And how is that money being spent?
Yeah.
It's not up to the artist really to decide. You obviously have marketing budget, then there's video budgets, and in this day and age, you know, because I've seen it before, like with Ed, he was making videos for 25 quid.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to spend. I've seen it. I've learned so much. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on a music video. You don't. It's not about that. You can spend, you know, get your mates together and be creative and do whatever it is and make something wonderful. The technology's there, and if you've got the art, the creative know-how, you can make these things work. But no, I'm really excited. I mean, it hasn't been properly announced yet, you know.
Oh, so we've got an exclusive.
Well, you exclusive. You just got an exclusive. I just dropped one in there for you. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So yeah, it hasn't really been announced, but anyway, it has now. So yeah, no, I can't wait, and it just feels like the right time to do that, and I'm, you know, I'm excited to support new music, and I can't wait who's going to be part of this, you know, who's going to be my first signing, and I've got my eye on some great people, you know.
Is one of them your son?
No, that's two.
Because Jake,
I mean,
I was very fortunate to be at your birthday party and see your very young son pull out a guitar, sit down, and sing a song that he wrote.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I've just witnessed a star. And, you know, obviously there's a long way to go, but I was like, give him 6 years of just growing up.
Yeah, no, of course.
And this kid can be.
Yeah,
you got one there, Jake.
Well, thanks, mate.
Are you interested in him following in the family footsteps of going into music, or is that what he wants to do, or was?
I mean, I think, you know, he's only 13, so he's really young. But you know, I mean, to be fair, I just want him to have opportunities, like you know, any parent. You know, if he wants to go into it, then of course I'll support him. But I'll support him on anything I think he wants to do. He's, you know, little rascal. He's a bit of a, you know, all-rounder. So it's like, you know, seeing him do his music thing, I'm obviously a proud dad going, you know, but, you know, I don't want to sort of make it too glossy for him.
I think the genes,
he's got the
genes definitely,
he's got to work at it.
The genes definitely landed there, Jake. I was like, well, how's he writing songs like this at 12 years old?
Yeah, no. Well, again, I mean, he's been surrounded with it. You know, Ed's, you know, held him as a baby, and he's surrounded with all these artists his entire life.
Yeah.
And been to all the biggest gigs and shows and festivals, and, you know, on stage with Wiley with headphones on and all sorts of stuff, you know. So it's like, it's just in their blood, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What role does resilience play in your life?
Resilience?
Resilience.
In what way?
Personally, professionally, how do you cultivate it in an industry that's constantly evolving?
What, in terms of like being strong against all the sort of resilient against the negative stuff? Or?
Absolutely. Being strong against the negative, coming through situations like lawsuits, coming through, you know, financial hardships, but knowing actually this is what I need to do and this is my destiny. Like, how do you stay resilient for those people that are going through it, that are believing in their dream, but are coming up against the wall time and time again?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think it's just from having those knockbacks and like I said sort of earlier, like thinking, well, it wasn't meant to be, you know, it's not like it you know, we all come up against problems, you know, and I think it's how you face the problems and how do you get around those problems. And so I see it as like it wasn't meant to be for whatever reason, you know. If, you know, the door closes on you, then that wasn't the door to walk through. So there will be another door that you can walk through, and that's the way you need to live your life, and that's the way you need to go. I think I have always been a bit like that, and that's how I deal with it. I mean, I do feel quite resilient because of that, and I guess that gives me, like, it helps me a lot, you know, because I'm not a massive worrier. I don't worry because I think I'm wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if I'm worrying, well, I'm only going to worry about, it's just in my head.
Yeah.
It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Like, so what am I worrying about? If I'm just worrying, then I'm like, well, it's something else. I should be doing something else.
Yeah, finding a solution.
I'm not saying I don't worry, and I'm not saying I don't get scared or upset or anything. Of course I do. But I'll try and sort of almost, you know, even though I don't want to be in a box, I'll put these other things in a box and go, that's where they go, not me.
So you recognize it, you
Try and
park it,
recognize it. Yeah.
and you try and move on.
Yeah. So I go, well, that's what it is. I'm not going to waste my time, dealing with that, because I have to, call it reprogramming the mind or whatever it is, and go, okay, well, let's park it, like you said, and it's there and gone. And also, I think other things are really important. Like exercise is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I think food and diet is really important. I think people around you are really important. I think, I swim quite a lot. I love swimming. I just do like an hour, and it just, for me, it just clears the mind. I think for a lot of people, I don't think they realise how important actually some things like exercise are.
Yeah.
I mean, been stuck in a studio for so long,
Yeah.
A lot of people in music, they're there, and you're sort of stuck with no light as well. Yeah. Loads of people come to my studio, they're like, "Oh my God, you got windows." I'm like, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's nice. It's in the country, it's fields. You're like, "Oh, this is nice."
And then I'm like, "Well, it's just a shed." I mean, it's literally a shed in the garden. But a lot of people, they don't have any light. I mean, that must really mess with your head.
Yeah.
But they don't have, you got to work where you got to work. You got to find, a space. But yeah. I think there are lots of elements to it. I don't think it's just, the mind. I think it's other things that you do around that. Yeah.
It's funny because we had Danero on here, and he was talking about hugging the wall.
Because,
yeah. He was talking about exercise, and he said, that's the thing that keeps him going. He started a regime where he exercises regularly.
Yeah.
And he exercises to a point of almost blackout now. And he's like, but the way the endorphins make him feel.
Yeah.
It just changes his perspective.
I mean, I don't go that hard. But
you don't have to train to black out people, but I think the sentiment.
I need to a bit more, but there's always that, isn't there?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I didn't realise that as well. I think that's something I've come, I think being a bit more active is something. Maybe as I've got older, I've realised actually I probably do need to move around a bit more. You know what I mean?
What advice would you give to young creatives who might be struggling to find their way in the industry?
I would say do not stop doing it. I think you've got to be, going back to resilience, I think you've got to be resilient, not to give up. And I think, like I said, keep knocking on those doors and keep trying to push forward. And not every song you write is going to be a hit. And that's normal. And what is a hit anyway, Everything that you do, I think, as a new artist, it is hard work. You've got to be prepared for that. You've got to have that attitude where, if you want to be the best, then you've got to really go for it. You can't sit back and wait for it to come to you. If you've got a track on your computer, put it out. Release it. Don't just sit on it, leave it on your hard drive. Give it a chance. Don't worry if the mix isn't quite where you want it, or you haven't got it where get it to as good as you can get it, and then try and push it out there, get it out there, release it. Collaborate. Collaboration is really important. Go to places where there are other musicians. Go to, me and you, we were out all the time at different events and things, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
From going to shows and from hanging out with different music people, and there were different spots, and there were places everywhere, all over the world, in different, cities, towns, wherever. Find where it is and become part of it. Socialize, talk to people, Obviously, if you're one of these people that is not very good at that and you just want to stay inside, it's probably not the job for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can be a creative in other ways, and that can be beautiful too. You don't have to be, a worldwide star in order to be a great songwriter or artist or whatever you do. So don't take the pressure off you there, and just enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. That's the main part.
The journey. Yeah.
Journey of it all, because it is a journey.
What would you say, with all the success that you've had, and as you mentioned, the failures that you've had as well, what would you say would be the key moment that defines your career in your own mind, that you look back on and go, that's the moment that I feel most proud of because it made me achieve this, or it made my mindset become that, or it turned me into this type of person? What would be that key moment for you?
Um, I think the key moment, what in terms of the feeling of knowing what I was doing,
Yeah.
I think it probably was the time I got fired. Actually, that was the key moment in my life that changed the course of my life, for sure. Because it made me realize that I now know I don't want to do that anymore. I now know what I want to do, and I need to work. I need to do it. There's no other option. There's nothing else I can do. In that respect, that was, I guess, my life-changing moment in terms of doing the music. But when the success and everything started to happen, I think it was probably, I don't know, I think it was a few things, seeing the growth of an artist from playing in little pubs to, you know, Wembley and beyond,
World stadiums,
right?
stadium tours. Yeah.
Just, I think it was the highlights of, I remember seeing him in Guildford, you know, at the Boiler Room, and the, he didn't change. It was the same show,
Yeah.
but there was only 20 people or 30 people there.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. Then, and he walked off the stage and he stood in the middle of the room and played a guitar acoustically and said, no one talk, just listen. He just played and unplugged, and it was just such a moment. And I was like, what was going on?
Yeah.
You know, and then he did the same thing at Wembley.
Wow.
And I remember seeing the first Wembley shows were like insane. I was like, wow. It was very emotional.
I can imagine.
Seeing that journey.
How important is loyalty to you? Because when I look at you, one of the things for me that kind of defines your success is, you know, you've mentioned your publisher who you were with for a very, very long time. You mentioned your management who you were with for a very, very long time. You know, you and Ed have had a relationship for a very, very long time. Like,
Yeah.
you have consistent people around you that have played a part, small parts, large parts, whichever way you want to look at it, in your success, and you've stuck by them. When, even in times when, you know, other people may have said, well, actually, maybe you should go with this person because they're bigger and they can give you this, that, and the third, but you stayed with those people. How important was it for you to stay loyal and keep those people around you when in this industry, quite often, you know, talent, writers, producers, artists are quite quick to jump to the next, jump to the next, and jump to the next so that they can achieve the goals that they have in your head. How important was it for you to stay loyal to those people?
I mean, really important. I think, you know, when you've got something good and when you've got a good relationship with people, then that's all you need, you know. I mean, even with my lawyers and my accountants, I mean, they're supposed to be the most boring people in the world, but I love them. You know, they're sort of like the family. I mean, I've been with John Statham, I mean, you know, for years. I mean, he doesn't even talk to me really anymore. He doesn't need to. He's fishing all the time. But, you know, he's an absolute legend. And when I first met him, I was like, you just get it.
Yeah.
You understand me. And I think that's the point. You know, we all need to feel understood. And I think having the right people around you, you know, with like John, you know, with legal decisions, it would be, I wouldn't always go, well, let's just go in, you know, guns are blazing and let's just take this. And he wouldn't, you know, he was like, look, let's get this done and let's move on. So I learned a lot from him in terms of his approach. It wasn't all about, you know, you think your head lawyers are going to go in and, but hey, let's just kick the door down. But I wanted work. I still need to work. You know, I mean, the levels of stuff that I've done, fees, you know, but I don't want to out fee myself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With a new artist, and I know there isn't budgets there, but I still want to work with them. So I have to always. My whole life has been a juggling act, bouncing balls left, right, and centre, making decisions on, do I take a lot less money?
Yeah.
But or not. But then, like I said earlier, it's not about that. I want to have a long career. I'd rather have great music out there. And I also believe that if the song's good and if it does well, it will come it will come anyway, or it will come from somewhere else. So it's always juggling.
Because I always have
Right.
wondered, because I see you work with a lot of brand new artists,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
crazy.
they have no budget.
No, there's no budget, bro.
They have no budget.
There's no budget.
But you're
I
like, no,
know.
come to the studio.
Yeah, I'm like,
let's do some records.
Yeah.
And I see you do this time and
Yeah.
time again. And, you
Yeah.
know, it'd be easy if you'd say, no, I'm just going to work with Bono. Or I'm just going to work with
Well,
this
yeah.
person. You
Yeah.
know, it's because you're at that level. But
Well, it's not exciting for me. I mean, no, I'm not dissing Bono by any means. I'd love to bloody work with you two, but for me, the exciting part has always been that development, that early stage before anyone's got their little teeth and claws and anything into it. It's like it's a blank canvas, and I'm seeing it from the roots. I'm seeing the growth, and it's so exciting. And the mind and the dreams and all those things, they're the things that get me excited.
Yeah.
And then the song, then you're writing songs. Like I wrote a song yesterday, this brand new artist I've never worked with before. I'm just like, and I came home last night, I'm playing it all night in the kitchen. And that's like a normal night for me. I'll come back, not every song, but pretty much, it goes on. I'll go back in the car, I'm just written it that day, and it's a new artist and I'm excited by it. And I don't know where they're going to go. Are they the next one? That's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them, but are they? That could be the next one.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be in the mix and work with as many as I can than not.
Yeah.
And go, well, the door's closed, I've done this. And do you know what I mean? It's not about that. It's being in the mix, and it's collaboration. Like I said earlier, it's like collaborating with new people is so exciting.
Yeah.
Because you're always learning something.
I hear you.
Yeah, man.
Jake, it's been an amazing talk. We're coming to the end. I just want to ask you one last question, which is kind of something we always do on this podcast, which is, if you can cast your mind back, and I kind of asked you it already, but I'm going to ask it again. If you can cast your mind back to a time where you felt like you had to be unstoppable in order to achieve your goal in music.
Yeah. I think it's always been something, I guess, within me, to not stop doing it, to the drive to create, and I guess to work with and collaborate with awesome people. Music's more than just a song. It's also affects so many people, and I think that in itself is so powerful that it becomes more than just the essence of the writing or the whatever. It's not mine anymore. The song becomes unstoppable. And I think that's where it becomes a whole different thing. It's like, what is that? You write something, where does it come from? You create something, it's out in the world. It's not yours anymore. It's someone's wedding.
Yeah. Someone's memory.
Someone's memory. It's someone falling in love. It's someone breaking up. It's everything, and that's powerful.
Yeah,
that's the bit that chokes me and gets me every time, and that's what keeps me going. And many more.
Wow.
Many more memories.
Jake, I can talk to you for hours on end. We do talk for hours on end.
I know. I was like, it's Thursday. We've been here for 4 weeks.
I love chatting to you. I love hanging with you. I love your
you
energy.
so much, man. Honestly.
I love you and the family so much. And I really appreciate the 2.5 hour drive that you made to come and do this podcast today.
I do it again. I'm going to drive back and come back again.
And we'll do a part 2. We can do a part 2. And I just want to thank you for being on the podcast. And I just want to thank you for the insight that you've given and the humility that you bring to all of the achievements that you've had, because, I think you have always been the same person that I met before the hits that you are now, with a plethora of, we reeled it off at the start, 9 #1 albums, 7 billion streams. Like, that's not a joke. So I just wanted to say, keep being you. Congratulations on everything. And thank you for doing this interview. For those tuned in, remember to like, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. If you're looking for bonus footage, make your way across to the Patreon where you can find that. And as always, remember, You can always choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable.